Hi, I'm Michael Josephson, the founder of Character Counts, and I'm very excited for you here at the Columbus School because I understand you're about to bring Character Counts up to the really next level, and I really want to thank Susan and Andres, I hope I said that right, and I really want to encourage all of you to look at this as a great opportunity to reflect on how you can move to the next level in terms of behavior and in terms of excellence. Now you recall our statement, you don't have to be sick to get better, so there's no notion that you have to have Character Counts to be a good school or to have good students, but I think we can make them better. And when this program works in unison, and that's one of the key things I want to urge you teachers to be thinking about, is do your share. Whatever course you're in, look for the opportunity to use the language. Look for the opportunity to make a reference to the students' behaviors in terms of the 6 pillars. Look for the opportunities to reinforce the concepts of locks and key values, etc. Because the more of you that talk about it and the more natural it just becomes sort of the background. And remember, this is important not only in your relationship with your students, but in your relationship with parents and, of course, your relationship with each other. I think there are basically 5 major concepts I want to remind you of that will maybe help you be sure that you really anchor this as solidly as you want to have the kind of potential transformational effects that Character Counts can produce. The first and most obvious is the 6 pillars of character. You want to be constantly thinking of and using that terminology: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And for you to remember, and the parents to remember, and the kids, remember the little acronym TERRIFIC, TRRFCC. Trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. That should be the filter. That should be sort of the matrix through which you put all of your behavioral analysis. And you can even begin to do that in some of your subject areas, if you're in history or in literature, to sometimes look at the characters in terms of these things and ask students which is their strengths and which is their weaknesses. Because the more you integrate it, the more it becomes their everyday DNA. The second thing that's important is this concept team. You may recall that from your training. It's teach, enforce, advocate, and model. And that's the primary implementation system that we recommend that really works solidly. And that means clearly that when you're trying to teach a value, a concept, teaching it means you explain it, you describe it, but in some meaningful way so that the student feels it's relevant and concrete. Enforce stands for the notion that you have to have consequences, whether they be positive or negative, depending on the conduct. But the fact of the matter is, whatever you allow, you encourage. And if these values are critical, you have to stand behind those values. And when you see behavior that's inconsistent, you need to say something. You need to do something. And by the same token, when somebody does something rather exceptional that manifests one of those values, you should point that out as well. The A stands for advocate, and that's just to remind you that we're not neutral on values, we're not neutral on character. You're advocating it. You're telling a young person, this is what you could be, this is what you should be. You'll be the best you can be, and you'll achieve more if we advocate you living up to these 6 values. And the final one, in many ways the hardest one, is to model it. And that's to be very self-conscious about the fact that everything you say or do could be evaluated in terms of those 6 core values. And how are you doing? You don't have to be perfect. But if you make a mistake, you need to acknowledge it. That's what accountability is. If you turn in papers late after you said they'd be, you should apologize and indicate that's part of responsibility. So the key is team, teach, enforce, advocate, and model. The third major concept we want to remind you of is just the decision-making model, to remind young people that there's not only good decisions and bad decisions, there are good decisions and better decisions and the best decisions. And while at first you want to get them to eliminate the bad decisions, anything that's unethical or illegal is a bad decision, to help them understand that a lot of problems have a range of potential solutions. And what we're looking for is the best possible result. And so you use that phraseology and ask the young person what's the end product that they want to have, what would be the best possible result that we could have of this situation, and then how do we get it. The fourth major concept that I want to remind you of is this just general notion of locks and key values. It's to help you focus on the idea that if you're going to really affect the way they think, which is necessary if you're going to affect the way they behave, you've got to think of it in terms of the core belief and to isolate and identify those beliefs that you want to encourage and reinforce, and to identify those beliefs, like a cynical belief that a person has to lie or cheat in order to succeed. That's a lock belief. But the more you think in terms of your end product as to what are the beliefs that are going to lead to that end product, you can be a little more self-conscious about trying to encourage young people to believe what you need and want them to believe. The final and fifth concept that I think is useful and important to be using as much as you can is our theory of change or behavior modification. The Josephson Institute change model is the one that basically, you may remember, has two parts. If you want somebody to change their behavior in a meaningful way, they have to have two beliefs. One, that they can do it, and secondly, that it's worth it. And if you think about that in terms of when you're trying to persuade a young person to do his homework, or you're trying to persuade him to exercise more self-control, or to take college more seriously, or whatever it might be, or for that matter, parents asking them maybe to downplay a little grades, or to have a better perspective, you need to think about, first of all, what would you have to say or do to persuade the person you're trying to change to believe that it's worth it. It's worth it has two pieces. One is the end goal is something they value, like losing weight. It's worth it. But it also means it's worth the cost you pay for it. So if it costs you too much in order to get it, the only way to lose weight is to starve yourself for 30 days, they might think it's worth it to lose weight, but it's not worth it to pay that price. So keep in mind, you're always going to be thinking in terms of the behaviors you want and positioning it with the young people in terms of it's worth it. If you manifest this quality, they're going to have benefits. And the second part of that is that they can do it. In some cases, it's obvious, like honesty. They know they can be honest. But when it comes to self-control, for example, they may not know whether they have impulse control. The point still remains the same. You want to do both. You want to show that it's worth it and they can do it. So with these 5 things, all built around the wonderful wrappings of character counts and with the 6 pillars being at the base, I think you're off to a wonderfully exciting opportunity. Please stay in touch with us. Take pictures. Show us what you're doing. Let's post them on the website. And let's make Columbus the absolute model for Columbia, because I think it can be. Thank you so much.